I remember that winter like it was a living thing, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on the town with a silence that wasn't peaceful. It was watchful. The snow had started early that year, turning everything white and blank, erasing familiar landmarks, until even the streets I thought I knew felt like a stranger's. I had just moved back home after college, thinking the cold would be comforting, a kind of familiar weight I could wrap myself in. But that winter, it felt like the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I was working nights at the gas station on the edge of town, the kind of place where the fluorescent lights flicker, and the heating never works right. My shifts were long and empty, except for the occasional trucker or local, who looked like they hadn't seen daylight in weeks. One night, a week into January, I was the only one there. The snow outside was falling so hard, it sounded like it was smothering the world. Around 3 a.m, the bell over the door jingled, and I saw a man standing there. He was tall, hunched over slightly, wearing a coat caked with snow, and his eyes were the kind you notice first, sharp and unreadable. He asked for a pack of cigarettes, then just stood there, looking at me, like he was waiting for something to happen, or maybe watching to see if I was worth noticing. I can't explain why, but I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I asked him to pay first. He fumbled for his wallet and dropped some cash, and when he bent down, I saw a glint on the ground by his shoe. At first, I thought it was just a lighter, but the shape was wrong. It was long and thin, metal, and then, before I could even think, he stood up, and I realized he had a knife in his coat pocket, the kind with a sharp, narrow blade. I froze, trying not to make a sound. He smiled, just slightly, and said, "You ever wonder what it feels like to see someone and know they're already gone?" That line, it didn't just creep me out. It made my whole body lock up. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the snowstorm outside made it impossible. The doors were locked, and even if I got out, no one would see me through the white blanket, swallowing the streets. He started circling the counter, slowly, dragging the tip of the knife along the metal edge, so it made this soft, dragging sound that echoed in the empty store. I tried to speak, tried to ask what he wanted, but my voice wouldn't work. And then he said something that I still hear in my sleep. "It's funny how cold everything gets in the winter. Makes people brittle, makes them easy to break." He leaned over, and I could see the way his hands shook slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. The air smelled like snow and metal, a sharp, bitter mixture that made me gag. I don't remember how long it went on. That first night, time felt like it had slowed, each tick of the clock stretching into minutes. Eventually, he left, just like that, slipping out into the storm. I don't know why he didn't attack me that night, but I remember the relief didn't last. I called the police the next morning, trying to tell them what happened, but they brushed it off. Cold weather delusions, one of them said, and that phrase haunts me to this day, because it felt like they were trying to erase what I knew was real. The snow kept falling, and with each night that passed, I felt like he was closer. There were footprints in the white parking lot, outside the gas station, that weren't mine. Long, narrow, and circling, like he was practicing. Sometimes, I'd see him standing just past the fogged-up windows, not moving, just watching me. And when I blinked, he'd be gone. I started losing sleep, driving myself crazy, imagining the knife slicing the air, just inches from my face. My friends tried to convince me to quit, to leave town, but I couldn't. I had bills, and pride, and a strange stubbornness that refused to let some shadow scare me away. One night, about 3 weeks in, it escalated. I was stocking shelves when I heard the bell ring. I looked up, and he was there again, coat dripping with snow, eyes dark, and that smile that made my skin crawl. He didn't speak at first. He just watched me, and I realized he wasn't asking for anything anymore. He was hunting. The lights flickered, and in that moment, I understood that he had been stalking me all along, testing the air, waiting for the exact right night, when I'd be weakest. I grabbed the phone, hands trembling, dialing 911 with one hand, while the other fumbled for anything I could use as a weapon. He saw me reach, and suddenly he laughed, soft and chilling, like ice cracking. Then, he lunged. I dodged, barely, and ran behind the counter, banging the metal shelves into each other, creating a clanging racket that I prayed would scare him off. But it didn't. He was relentless, and I could see it in his face, the way his eyes lit up with this joy that no one should ever feel. I crawled under the counter when he tried to reach me, and that's when I noticed the small camera on the wall, the kind meant for security. He had come prepared. He had known exactly what I'd do, where I'd hide. Every instinct screamed at me to get out, to fight, but the storm outside made the doors impossible. I was trapped, and he was inside, moving slowly, savoring the fear. I don't remember exactly what happened in the next hour. My memory is jagged, like broken glass. I remember screaming, breaking shelves, throwing anything I could get my hands on. I remember him cornering me by the freezer doors, the knife shining in the flickering light, and me thinking, that was it. This was how winter claimed me, cold and silent. And then, like a miracle, the front doors burst open. A couple of truckers, who had been delayed by the storm, stumbled in, shouting, and he ran, just vanished into the snow, like he was swallowed by the winter itself. I was shaking, bleeding, and alive, but hollow. After that night, I quit the job. I moved out of town, but I couldn't escape what he did to me. That winter never left me. Every time it snowed, I felt him there, circling the edges of my life, waiting. They never caught him. The police found a few other victims that year, scattered along highways and abandoned buildings, all from towns blanketed by snow, all with the same methodical cruelty. The papers called it the winter predator. But for me, it wasn't a headline. It was him, breathing in the cold, watching, smiling, waiting for someone to slip, to falter. Years later, I still get chills, walking past a gas station, or seeing a storm start. I think about that night constantly. I think about how close I came to not existing, and how the winter, silent and cruel, makes monsters possible. Some part of me knows he's still out there, still waiting for the snow to fall, still finding people brittle enough to break. And every year, when the first flurries hit the ground, I feel that knot in my stomach tighten, and I realize that winter never really ends. It just waits, patient, like him. I used to love Christmas. The smell of pine and dust. When you drag the tree out of the attic. The way lights make even the ugliest street feel safer. Like someone's watching out for you. That feeling is gone now. It's been replaced by a tightness in my chest every December. Because the worst thing that ever happened to me happened on Christmas Eve. And it happened quietly, in a house full of lights, while the rest of the world was singing. That year I was 32, recently divorced, and trying to prove to myself that I was still a functioning adult. I had bought a small house on a dead-end street, in a middle-class neighborhood outside Columbus. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My daughter Emma was 6, and that Christmas was supposed to be special. It was my first year with her alone, and I was determined not to let the divorce turn into a sad memory she'd carry forever. I decorated early. I overdid it. Lights on the gutters, a wreath on every window, a big plastic Santa staked into the frozen lawn. Inside, I put up a real tree, even though I hated the mess, because Emma loved it. Christmas Eve fell on a Sunday. Emma had gone to bed buzzing with excitement, her stocking already hanging from the fireplace. I remember standing in the living room, after I tucked her in, looking at the tree lights blinking, feeling tired, but proud. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the heater. Outside, snow had started falling, in thick, lazy flakes, muffling everything. Around 10:30, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't loud or aggressive, just a polite knock, like someone who didn't want to bother you too much. My first thought was that it was a neighbor. People on our street did that sometimes, dropping off cookies or extra gifts. I didn't feel scared. I felt slightly annoyed. I was in sweatpants, halfway through wrapping the last present. I looked through the peephole and saw a man standing on my porch. He was white, maybe late 40s, wearing a red knit hat dusted with snow, and a dark coat. He looked normal. Tired, maybe. He held a cardboard box in his hands. I cracked the door, keeping the chain on. "Sorry to bother you," he said, his voice soft. "I think a package meant for me got dropped off here by mistake. Says 214 on the label. I'm 216. I glanced down at the box. There was a shipping label, with my address partially torn. I hadn't ordered anything recently, but it was Christmas. Stuff shows up. I don't think I have any packages, I said. He smiled apologetically. Yeah, that's what my wife said too. I just thought I'd check before the delivery company closes for the holiday. I should have closed the door. That's the part everyone says afterward. But nothing about himself alarms. He looked cold. He looked harmless. I slid the chain off and opened the door wider. The moment I did, he shoved his foot inside, and the smile disappeared. He moved fast, faster than my brain could keep up with. One hand clamped over my mouth. The other pushed the door shut behind him. The box fell to the floor, and I heard something heavy inside it. Thud. My heart slammed so hard, I thought I might pass out. Don't scream, he whispered, right in my ear. Your kid's asleep. Let's keep it that way. I froze. He knew about Emma. That's what broke me. Not the strength in his grip, or the fact that a stranger was in my house, but the certainty in his voice. When he said my kid, he had been watching. He hadn't knocked on the wrong door. He dragged me into the living room, keeping his hand over my mouth, steering me away from the stairs. The Christmas lights blinked, like nothing was wrong. He pushed me onto the couch, and finally let go. I started shaking immediately, my teeth chattering so hard. I thought he'd hear it. Listen, he said, holding up his hands, like he was calming an animal. I don't want to hurt anyone. I just need something, and then I'll go. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely there. Money, jewelry, whatever you have. That's easy to carry. I nodded too fast. Okay. It's in the bedroom. I'll show you. He followed me down the hall, staying close, one hand tucked inside his coat. I could tell he had something there. I didn't want to see it. In the bedroom, I opened my dresser and pulled out the small lockbox where I kept cash and my grandmother's jewelry. My hands were useless, numb and clumsy. I dropped the box on the bed and stepped back. He opened it and smiled again, wider this time, like Christmas had come early. See, he said, easy. Then he looked at the family photo on my nightstand. Me, Emma, and my ex, taken years before, at a pumpkin patch. She's cute, he said. Your daughter. My stomach dropped. You said you'd leave, I said. I will, he said. Just want to make sure you don't do anything stupid after. He pulled out a roll of duct tape from his coat. That's when I realized the box on the porch hadn't been empty. He taped my wrists and ankles with practiced efficiency. His movements calm, almost gentle. He taped my mouth last, pressing the tape down hard enough to hurt. Then he carried me back into the living room and laid me on the floor behind the couch, out of sight from the stairs. Stay quiet, he whispered. If you don't, I go up there. Understand? Tears streamed down my face. I nodded, as much as the tape would allow. He stood there for a moment, just watching me, like he was committing the scene to memory. Then he picked up the box, now filled with my things, and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back. "Merry Christmas," he said. The door closed softly behind him. I lay there, bound and shaking, listening to the heater click on and off, listening for footsteps on the stairs. Minutes felt like hours. My wrists burned, where the tape cut into my skin. I focused on breathing through my nose, terrified that Emma would wake up and come looking for me. At some point, I heard sirens in the distance. I don't know if they were real, or if my brain made them up to give me hope. Eventually, I managed to work my hands loose, enough to rip at the tape with my teeth. It took forever. When I finally got free, my arms were purple and numb. I ran upstairs and checked on Emma. She was still asleep, clutching her stuffed reindeer, completely unaware that anything had happened. I collapsed next to her bed and sobbed until I felt sick. The police came after I called 911. They took fingerprints, asked questions, nodded sympathetically. They told me he'd likely been casing houses, using Christmas as cover. Packages, goodwill, trust. They never caught him. Every year since, I still put up the tree for Emma, because she deserves that. I still hang the lights, but I don't open the door for anyone I don't know. Not ever. And every Christmas Eve, when the house goes quiet and the snow starts to fall, I swear I can still hear that polite knock and a soft voice asking me to trust him just for a second. I remember that winter like it was a living thing, something that crept under your skin and refused to leave. It started small, with the kind of snow that looks harmless, soft, clean, but when it piles up, when it blankets everything, it can hide almost anything. I had just moved back to my hometown after years away, thinking I could escape the kind of life I'd left behind, the kind of people I tried to forget. But winter has a way of dragging ghosts out into the open, and mine came in the form of my neighbor, Tom. He was an old man, mostly silent, but with eyes that always felt like they were calculating something, always watching. Nobody talked much about him. Not really. He kept to himself, and the rest of US didn't care enough to pry. That is, until the snow started falling heavier than it had in decades. The first night I noticed something was wrong. It was already dark by 6. A black so deep it swallowed streetlights whole. I was sitting by my window, just staring at the quiet street, when I saw him, Tom, shuffling down the road, in that same slow, careful way he always moved, dragging along, dark, canvas bag behind him. At first, I thought maybe it was firewood, or maybe he'd gotten some kind of delivery he didn't want anyone to see. But as I watched, something about the way that bag sagged and shifted, it didn't make sense. You could tell, even in the dim light, that whatever was inside it was heavy and alive, like it was resisting him. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was projecting some kind of fear onto an old man in the snow, but I couldn't shake it. The next morning, the town was quiet, in that hollow, eerie way that snow creates. All you could hear was the wind cutting across empty streets and the scrape of shovels. I tried to go about my day, went to the grocery store, ran errands. But every time I passed Tom's house, that same dark bag was gone. Just empty snow around his porch. Footsteps frozen in the light, leading nowhere. People nodded at me in the store, pretending nothing was wrong. But I could see it in their eyes. The tension, the unease. That came from knowing something in the neighborhood had changed. I wanted to ask them. I wanted to shout at someone. Anyone. But the words wouldn't come. That night, the screaming started. It was muffled at first, like it was coming from far away. But the kind of far away that grows closer with each second, until it's inside your skull. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I ran outside, and the snow was falling so hard it stuck to my eyelashes, made it impossible to see more than a few feet. And then I saw it. Footprints in the snow. Not his. Not mine. Bigger. Whiter. As though something huge had been dragging itself along the road. They led straight to the old riverbed behind his house. I had crossed that area dozens of times as a kid. There were always warnings. Stories about people vanishing there. Stories I had dismissed as folklore. But now, following those tracks, I felt my stomach twist in a way I hadn't felt since I was a teenager, and almost froze in the river ice myself. I found him there. Or rather, I found what was left of him. Tom was there, sprawled across the thin ice. The bag ripped open beside him. And inside it, I can't describe it. I try to, but words fail. It was a person. A young girl. I didn't know her. I'd never seen her in town. But she was real. And she had been in that bag. Alive. For God knows how long. The snow around her was already stained, melting into a grim, frozen gray. And then I saw him. Not Tom. He was gone. But someone was moving in the tree line. Crouched low. Impossibly fast. Disappearing as soon as I tried to focus on it. I ran back toward the house. Every step cracking through the frozen snow. Every breath burning my lungs. I locked myself in. Called the police. But even as I did, I could hear it outside. Soft, deliberate footsteps circling my house. Stopping whenever I stopped listening. The officers came in the morning. They asked questions. Took statements. Tried to make sense of the scene. But there was no body of Tom. Just the girl. Alive. Scared. Shivering. Whispering something I couldn't understand. Because all she could do was cry. I stayed with her until they brought in social workers. Until she was safe. Or as safe as someone could be after what had happened. But the thing that haunted me most wasn't what I saw. It was what I didn't see. Tom had vanished. The canvas bag. The footprints. The sounds in the night. They never explained any of it. And every time the wind howled, every time the snow piled thick and silent across the town, I could feel it again. That presence circling. Waiting. Something that thrived in winter. I never left my house at night after that. The snow that winter never stopped. Weeks passed. Then months. And each night I would see shadows move across the walls. Hear scraping at the windows. Soft whispers in the wind. Nobody else seemed to notice. They carried on. Shuffling their driveways. salting the roads, laughing at the cold. But I knew what was out there. I could feel it tracking me, counting my breaths, knowing where I slept, knowing that winter gave it cover. By February, the girl had been placed in a new home. The police had closed the case, and everyone pretended it never happened. But I couldn't. I walked the snow-covered streets, my footprints alone marking my passage. And every time I passed the riverbed, I could feel eyes on me. I could feel the weight of that bag, the struggle of whatever creature or person had taken Tom, had carried the girl, had vanished into the white. And I realized something I'd always known in the back of my mind. Winter doesn't forgive. Winter doesn't forget. That spring, the snow finally melted, but I could still hear it. Not the melting, not the dripping of water, but the memory of it, scratching at the edges of my mind. I moved away soon after, swore I'd never return. But even now, years later, in my new apartment, when the wind rattles my windows and the first snow falls on my street, I can feel it circling, waiting. And I know, as I always have known, that some horrors only live in winter. The rest of the year, they lie dormant, pretending to be gone, but they never really leave. And maybe that's the worst part. Not the screaming, not the vanishing, not even the girl in the bag. It's knowing that one day the snow will fall again, and they'll come back.